Joining me now is Republican Senator John Barrasso, the third-ranking Republican in the Senate, member of the Foreign Relations Committee. A lot in play here. Thanks very much. First of all, do you think that Alex Acosta should step down? Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, called for that today.
Well, what we hear today reported the charges from 10 years ago are horrific, as those new ones are as well. Every cabinet member, and he was confirmed in a bipartisan vote, every cabinet member serves at the pleasure of the president. I think the president's going to speak to it later today, and I'll leave it at that.
Senator, the president hasn't spoken on this yet, but would your advice to the White House be that this is politically toxic and that cabinet secretaries have to be beyond reproach? Now, understandably, the Senate did its job. It was a 60 votes in favor of him.
Well, I think the president's going to have to make that decision, as well as the secretary, to make a decision whether he wants to resign or not. I'm not calling for that today, but clearly all this new information, as well as the old information, continues to be troubling.
And you've been talking about the environment as well, and about you were present at the president's initiative yesterday. But what about the president's rollbacks of environmental protections, including in the coal industry, which is, of course, very big in your state, in Wyoming? You're a man of science. You are a doctor, a medical doctor. You know the effects of greenhouse gases. You know the science that is actually being ignored by many of the departments, Interior, Energy, EPA.
Well, you know, today I think Bernie Sanders and others are going to reintroduce or come out with a new Green New Deal, which to me would be a big green bomb in terms of blowing a hole in our strong and healthy and growing economy. There are things we are actually working on in a bipartisan way to deal with the impact of carbon dioxide on the environment. But I am not one of these climate alarmists. I'm much more of a realist, saying there are things we need to do long term and they have to be done globally. What Bernie Sanders and others are promoting are really unaffordable, unworkable. They want us to act dramatically, unilaterally, and immediately. And the United States is only about 13% of global emissions. So we need solutions, scientific solutions, that we can have deployed in places that are really making so much of the greenhouse gases. China, India, because if they don't adopt them, no matter what we do in the United States will make no difference at all.
But it will make a difference if the United States doesn't show some leadership. We've stepped out of the Paris Accords. The others have stayed in. I mean, you've lived through the smoke and the wildfires and a lot of the changes out west that have made the environment so fragile in the country you love.
Well, what I have said repeatedly is that the climate is changing. Man has a responsibility, and there are solutions that we're adopting in the Senate that the president has signed to make a difference there. New age nuclear power, which we're working on because there's no carbon emissions from nuclear power. In terms of the research that can be done, the investigations and finding ways to make carbon dioxide into products that can be sold, I think we need to do this through innovation, not regulation and taxation. And that's why I'm working with a bipartisan group of senators as well as the House to advance those issues. But what the Democrats are proposing, and they're doing it again today, is unaffordable for the American public. It would add to the cost for families about $65,000 per family per year. No one can afford that. And it's unpopular even with the unions, who say this would cost millions of American jobs and ultimately would ship the lifeblood of our economy to China. So the answer is innovation, working, research to come up with a way to find solutions that we can have deployed around the world and that will be used around the world. Otherwise, we're not being able to be effective.
I want to finally ask you about the British ambassador. The Prime Minister has said again today she has full faith in him, that he's doing his job, reporting as ambassadors are paid to, reporting his take. And he says, or people around him say, that the memos were cherry-picked to only show the negative things that he said, not the positive things he said, but that he's paid to report back to London. Do you think that it's a little petty to disinvite him from a diplomatic dinner last night and to say you're not going to work with him any longer?
No, I don't think so at all. I think the president has a right to make those decisions. Any country can send to the United States the ambassador that they choose, and then the way they're received and addressed in the country is up to the receiving country. But obviously, there are lots of changes happening in Britain now with Brexit, with a change in the prime minister, and I would imagine there's going to be a change in the ambassador as well.
Thank you so much, Senator John Barrasso. Thank you very much for being with us today. And David
Thanks, Andrea.
Ignatius, foreign columnist.